Live from London, you're watching BBC News. Parties make their final pitches to the public on the last full day of general election campaigning. The Conservative Cabinet Minister, meanwhile, tells the BBC he accepts that polls point to a massive Labour majority. Jamaica braces for life-threatening winds and torrential rains as Hurricane Beryl approaches. Hello, I'm Marianne Mashiri. Welcome to BBC News. It's the last day of election campaigning, isn't it? And today, Conservative Cabinet Minister has told the BBC he accepts that if the polls are correct, the Labour Party is heading for the largest majority this country has ever seen. Mel Stride's comments come as party leaders head to their campaign events, their final ones. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has told a Conservative Party rally he will fight for every vote, while Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has described tomorrow as an opportunity for people to turn the page and to move forward. Our political correspondent Helen Catt has more.
The Labour leader says this morning that he wants people to have more money in their pockets. And if Labour win on Thursday, he says he wants them to be better off in 5 years' time than they are now. He also told The Times he wants public services to improve by then too. But he said he would need a strong mandate, lots of votes in support, to do it, as there would be difficult choices. A message he was reiterating yesterday on the campaign trail.
If you want change, you have to vote for it. The polls do not predict the future. Constituencies like this will be very, very tight on Thursday. So every single vote counts. Every single vote has to be earned. And we have to make sure that until the polls close at 10 o'clock on Thursday, we are earning the respect and the trust of the confidence of voters across the country, because change will only come if you absolutely vote for it.
Rishi Sunak will aim his message directly at wavering voters later. The Tories will claim a small number of people in tight races could stop a big Labour win by lending the Conservatives their vote. He'll agree that a big Labour majority is not a foregone conclusion, but unlike Keir Starmer, he'll warn it would be damaging if it happened, as he did in a speech to supporters last night.
On Thursday, it is not a by-election. It is not a referendum on our party or the past. It is a choice about the future of our country and what that future means for you and your family. If there is an unchecked, unaccountable Labour Party in power with a supermajority, think what that would mean for everyone. A Labour Party with a blank cheque to do whatever they want.
Also talking about lending votes, the Liberal Democrat leader. Sir Ed Davey told The Guardian he thinks people are getting into the swing of tactical voting, where people who usually back different parties support the candidate best placed to beat the Tories. He claims that will make this election a once-in-a-century chance to change the political geography of the UK. Yesterday, he criticised the Conservatives' ability not just to govern, but to be in opposition too.
The Conservatives have been a failed government. They'd be a failed opposition. They're so divided, they can't even provide a strong opposition. If people want a party that's got principles and values and ideas and great local champions to oppose whoever is in government, the Liberal Democrats are here to do that.
We fought a really strong campaign.
The SNP is claiming today that the result in Scotland is too close to call and says a Labour government in Westminster would mean more austerity, which Labour has previously denied. All parties know they don't have long left now to make up voters' minds. Helen Catt, BBC News.
Well, we mentioned earlier, didn't we, the Work and Pensions Secretary Mel Stride. He was speaking to Emma Barnett, my colleague, on the Today programme, and he talked about the potential for a huge Labour majority. Have a listen.
So I totally accept that where the polls are at the moment means that tomorrow is likely to see the largest Labour landslide majority, the largest majority that this country has ever seen, much bigger than 1997, bigger even than the national government in 1931. What therefore matters now is what kind of opposition do we have? What kind of ability to scrutinise government is there within Parliament? And that is a strong reason to not give the Labour Party that.
So, sorry, you have accepted, as Working Pensions Secretary, that the election is lost?
I have accepted that where the polls are at the moment, and it seems highly unlikely that they're very, very wrong because they've been consistently in the same place for some time, that we are therefore tomorrow highly likely to be in a situation where we have the largest majority that any party has ever achieved.
So you could say the Conservatives have lost?
We are fighting for every single vote.
Well, there is Mel Stride. Here's our chief political correspondent, Henry Zeffman's analysis of Mel Stride's rather strange concession on the Today programme.
I can think of some stronger words than strange. This is not normal. It is not typical, to state the obvious, for a cabinet minister, or indeed any politician really, to essentially concede defeat the day before millions of voters go to the polls and actually determine what the outcome of this general election is. So what is Mel Stride trying to do? Well, look, it's been clear for a few weeks that the Conservatives think that their best hope of averting a vast Labour victory is, perhaps counterintuitively, to talk up a vast Labour victory. And that's what they've been doing for ages with the supermajority rhetoric, which we've all become familiar with. But this goes way beyond that. This is not a possible supermajority that Mel Stride was alluding to. He said it was almost certain that Labour would win the biggest majority any single party has ever won. It's extraordinary rhetoric, and needless to say, I don't think this is what would have been in the Conservatives' campaign grid as their closing message when they called this election 6 weeks ago.
It's the final day of campaigning, Henry, and that final message, apart from Mel Stride's message, but what are the main parties trying to put forward today to voters on this very last day, last gasps?
Well, in a more low-key and less dramatic way than Mel Stride, it is basically the Conservatives' closing message that, as it stands, Labour are going to win and going to win big. And so Rishi Sunak will be using that supermajority language as he campaigns in the southeast of England this afternoon to try to win back Conservative waverers. I think, actually, what he's doing in trying to talk up how big a Labour victory could be is he's not really targeting that message at people who might vote Labour, but actually at people who might vote for Reform UK or for the Lib Dems. He's trying to win them back to the Conservative fold, almost pitching the Conservatives as a strong opposition rather than as a potential party getting a fifth term in government, which is what they would get if they win this general election. And actually, a lot of the smaller parties, they're also arguing that this election is a foregone conclusion because they want potential Labour voters to decide that they can vote for a different party because the course of government is fixed. So you end up in this funny position where Labour, and Keir Starmer is campaigning in England, Wales and Scotland today, and Labour are basically the only party here saying that a Labour victory isn't inevitable. It's all a bit shaken up. But what you will hear from Labour today is that, yes, change, that one word that's been their slogan throughout this campaign, but that it only happens if you vote for it. And that's the message you will hear Keir Starmer hammering again and again, because they don't want potential Labour voters to stay at home or vote for someone else because they think that other people are doing the business of voting for Labour and getting them into government.
Well, that was our chief political correspondent, Henry Zeffman, there. Let's talk to you a little bit about postal voting, because the Royal Mail has responded to concerns over delays to postal votes, insisting there's no backlog in its system and that they're confident all ballots handed to them on time will be delivered prior to polling day. Many voters are still without their packs and wondering whether they'll miss out on having their say. Well, for 21-year-old Alice Graham, this should have been a first chance to vote in a general election. She registered to vote for a postal vote, but things aren't going to plan. Let's cross live now and speak to Alice, who joins me from Brighton. Alice, explain to viewers what exactly happened to you.
Yeah, I applied for a postal vote 21 days ago and it's just never arrived. And I called them up yesterday asking what was going on. They said there was nothing they could do for me. Tomorrow I'm just going to have to sit there powerless while everyone else is voting. And there's nothing I can do. I just can't vote.
So talk me through, where is it you want to vote in? And obviously you're in Brighton now. When did you apply for this? When did you fill out all the forms?
So I filled out the forms when I was in Edinburgh asking for my postal vote to be sent to Brighton because I'm here over the summer for an internship. And they approved it. The address is correct. I've checked and it's just never arrived down in Brighton.
Now, Scotland councils in Edinburgh and Fife and East Lothian, they've all set up these emergency voting centres, haven't they, for people who are away, but that's not an option for you. Can you explain why to viewers?
Yeah, so I called the council and they said I have two options. I can either go up to Edinburgh and pick up my postal voting pack, or I can vote in person in Edinburgh, but it's just completely unfeasible. It would cost me £100 for a return to Edinburgh, and it's a day I'm meant to be working. So there's absolutely no way I can get up there to vote. And really, I think they should be doing something else about it, because I have no choice but not to vote tomorrow.
How does it feel to be able to vote for the first time and yet not be able to? It must be, like, must hurt.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to vote for so long now, and I was so excited when the general election was announced, and I was like, wow, I can finally have my say. And now I'm just completely powerless, and it just feels awful, because I feel like everyone really deserves the right to vote, and I know I'm not the only one who hasn't received their postal vote, and it just seems completely unfair to me.
OK, well, Alice Graham, I'm really grateful to you for coming on to BBC News and talking to us about your postal vote. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, Professor Sir John Curtice has been a key part of election coverage in the UK for the last 45 years, hasn't he? And on the eve of polling, he gave us his take on the current state of play.
There will, during the course of the day, be a forest of final opinion polls. But unless they show something dramatically different from what we've seen consistently throughout the course of the last 6 weeks, we are anticipating that the Conservatives are going to end up somewhere around 20 points behind Labour on Thursday night. Certainly that's been the message throughout the campaign. Yes, support for Conservatives has fallen, but support for Labour has fallen a bit as well, leaving the lead largely unchanged. But that kind of lead does point to a potentially heavy defeat for the Conservatives, and Labour getting a substantial overall majority, even though perhaps Labour may not get much more than around 40% of the vote. We're very, very surprised that the opinion polls that come out in the last 24 hours of this campaign are going to paint a dramatically different picture. Maybe they show the Labour's lead narrowing a bit. That's not inconceivable, but a 20-point lead is not going to suddenly disappear in the matter of the last 2 or 3 days of an election campaign. The truth is the Conservatives themselves have been acknowledging that the question is, how badly do they lose, not whether they lose. And to be honest, that is where the uncertainty lies. Maybe in the end it's not as bad as some of the forecasts have been saying, and maybe we do end up with, let's say, around 150 Conservative MPs. But on the other hand, we can't rule out the possibility that it might end up being worse than that, and that Labour do end up with their biggest majority that they have ever managed to achieve. And that's where the uncertainty lies, and it is a not inconsiderable uncertainty. It could have important implications for the future of British politics. But as to who is going to be the tenant in 10 Downing Street, frankly, all bets are now on Sir Keir Starmer.
That's John Curtice there, who will be heavily involved, I'm sure, in tomorrow's election results programme, which will be fronted by my colleagues Clive Myrie and Laura Koonsberg. If you still have any questions ahead of tomorrow's election, you're more than welcome to head to the BBC News website and app, where you will find details of candidates in your area, guides to party manifestos, interviews with party leaders, and of course links to recent debates across the BBC. Just head to bbc.co.uk/news or the BBC News app, where you'll find our coverage of the general election so far. Now, some news from the Wimbledon Tennis Championships. It's just been announced that Andy Murray will play doubles with Emma Raducanu. Murray is playing at the championships for the final time before retiring later this year. The two-time men's single champion decided on Tuesday that he wasn't fit enough, unfortunately, to play in any singles matches after a recent back operation. But he said he would be competing in the doubles with his brother, Jamie. He will now also team up with Emma Raducanu, who, of course, is a former US Open championship. She is, of course, a superstar in her own right. Andy Murray is 37 years old, and he'll be playing at the championships for the final time before retiring later on this year. The pair have been handed a wild card, giving Mr. Murray and Miss Raducanu another shot at glory on his farewell appearance at Wimbledon. Now, here on BBC News, we're going to be taking the Politics Live show in just a few seconds' time, so do stay with us on the BBC.